Yeah, I think so. We'll see.
All right, we'd like to call to order this special meeting, February 22nd, 2018. Ms. Sandy, would you call the roll?
Mr. Ord.
Here.
Mr. Wascom.
Here.
Mr. Garlinghouse.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Talbot. Here. Mr. Lavelle.
Here.
Mr. Avery.
Here.
Mr. Mack.
Here.
All right, please stand for invocation. Everyone, please stand. Ms. Sandy, can you do a prayer for us?
Lord God in heaven, we thank you for able to come and meet here today. Lord, we just pray that we have our professionals here that want to offer help to our parish to help us against the mosquito problems that we have, Lord. May our ears be open and our minds be open. Lord, we just pray that you bless our time together and everything be done according to your will, because if not, it's all for nothing. It's in Jesus' name.
Amen. Mr. Avery, lead us in the pledge.
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this is a special meeting that we called. We have some guests that's coming to give us some educational information on mosquito abatement. I just want to make sure that everybody understands this is an educational meeting. We are not here to discuss a tax. We're not trying to start up mosquito abatement. We are getting information. That's all we are doing. We're going to allow the experts to speak. Once they're done, we'll see if the councilman has any questions, and then we will allow the public time to ask questions. So please let them finish their presentation, because we have 2 other meetings to do, and we need to get through it to allow y'all some time to ask questions. All right, so Mr. Kyle Mockler.
Mockert, yes, sir. Hello, my name is Kyle Mockert. I'm the public health entomologist at the Office of Public Health. And your staff contacted me and asked me if I would come. I gladly said yes, and I brought 3 other mosquito abatement directors with me, and I'll introduce them in just a few minutes. What I would like to do, rather than give a big presentation, is y'all all have the surveillance summary from 2017. This is put out by the Department of Health Disease Epidemiology section. They track all the arbovirus or mosquito or insect-borne viruses, and this is their report from last year. I want to go through, just so that we're on the same page with terminology, a number of things. I actually took my highlighter and highlighted some of this on the front page. Well, I'm not going to go through everything in here. I just want to, after the first page, it won't take even 2 or 3 minutes after that to cover this. First off, the goal of surveillance for West Nile infections in humans is to describe the disease burden of the West Nile infection on the human population, and that's what they're doing here. Only West Nile invasive disees, including encephalitis and meningitis, get reliably reported. I'm not going to read any more right here. West Nile comes in 3 phases. 80 to 90% of the cases are asymptomatic. You go give blood and they say, hey, you had West Nile. You go, okay. You had no symptoms. You had no idea you had it. That's probably close to 90%. About 10% of the cases, people get a rash, they get flu-like symptoms, they're sick for 4 to 7 days, and they get over it. Think summertime flu. Same types of things that we've had down here for many years, but in this case it's West Nile fever. When they actually do the blood work and they find out, yes, you had West Nile fever. Again, in the grand scheme of things, not a big deal. But somewhere less than 1% of the cases is neuroinvasive disease, and that involves the brain, spinal cord. And with that, you have a percent of those people who do not recover. It's either fatal, or even if they recover, they're left with Symptoms, neuromuscular problems often similar to polio. Think of that. Some people recover from that over time, some people don't. So West Nile came into this country in 1999. It was in Louisiana by 2001. In the years after that, you may remember the department was collecting dead birds. And we were collecting dead birds and we were looking for West Nile. Well, about 10 years ago, we quit asking for dead birds because West Nile is here. It's endemic. It's everywhere. It is in the bird population. West Nile is a bird mosquito virus. Humans and horses are dead-end hosts, meaning that we can get the disease, but we don't get a high enough virus titer in our system to pass it on if mosquitoes bite us. So while your horse can get it and it can kill him, most likely will if it's not vaccinated, it still will not, more mosquitoes that feed on it will not become infected from that horse with dead-end hosts. But it's a bird mosquito virus circulating back and forth in the birds and mosquitoes. And Randy Vaith, who's I'm going to introduce in a minute, has with East Baton Rouge Mosquito Control, and they've done a lot of research on West Nile in this area, no different than this parish. And he can go into more about the virus and the birds if you'd like. What else do I have there? We test for West Nile. A mosquito abatement district is what we call a mosquito abatement program that does certain things. There's education components, there's larviciding components, there's surveillance is the main thing. And by surveillance, we mean they look at the viruses out there and they make their determinations on where they're going to apply adulticides based upon that surveillance. And let's say that they have mosquito traps in all of your districts, and this week they come up and the mosquitoes test positive in your neighborhood with West Nile virus. Well, where would you want them to spray that week? You know, it's pretty straightforward. It's directed by disease. Disease pushes everything. You may have nuisance mosquitoes, and that's fine, and they can be treated and should be treated. But disease is what pushes a district in all of their decisions. So they can test for the disease a couple of ways. Back in the 60s, they found that they could put chickens out. And if they put chickens out, mosquitoes would feed on it, and they could periodically draw blood. And they could test that blood, and they could find Eastern equine encephalitis or St. Louis encephalitis or other diseases that the chickens had contracted from, or had antibodies to, from the mosquitoes. Well, about the time that we started getting West Nile, a lot of the districts moved over to doing mosquito pools, we call them. And we go out, we put nets out, we put traps out, we catch mosquitoes, we sort them according to species. By the way, there's 66, 67 different species, 67 in the state now. Most parishes have somewhere in the 50s. You didn't know you had that many different kinds of mosquitoes. Some of them are drive disease. Some of them have nothing to do with disease. Some of them almost never bite people. So you've got to, just because there's mosquitoes out there, you have to look at which mosquitoes you're dealing with at which times of the year, and you treat them differently. But we catch those mosquitoes, we bring them back, we sort them, we throw out the males, we sort them by species, we put them in vials, we send them to the Louisiana Analytical Disease Diagnostic Laboratory, which is part of the LSU Vet School. And they're tested there. And this is really nice because if you use chicken bloods, which was the standard for many, many years, you don't know when that chicken was. Let's say you test for West Nile. It takes, on average, 7-10 days or more for that chicken to become virulent. So that if the chicken was bitten on Sunday, you pull the blood on Monday, you get it to the lab on Tuesday, on Friday, they test it, it comes back, there's no West Nile. That's not true. So the next week rolls around, you pull the blood on Monday, you send it to the lab on Tuesday, you test it, get the results back on Friday, And it still says there's no West Nile. So the following week, you do it again. And on that Friday, which now 20 days out from the time that the chicken was fed upon, it comes up as positive. Well, if you've made 2 applications or 1 application in that area or 3 applications in that area, what good did that surveillance do you? Because you've already sprayed. So you don't really know what to do with it. You shouldn't, I'm one who does not believe that that should be your driving force. So what we do instead is we catch mosquitoes and we sort them. You pull them on Sunday night, you put it out, you catch them on Monday, you get them in the lab on Tuesday. On Friday, you get the results back from the LADDL, the LSU, and they say, you've got virus in your neighborhood. We treat that. And we suppress that population. And that becomes the priority. That's what surveillance-based mosquito control is all about. And it's in my mind, extremely useful. Now, the report I put in front of you has 16 years of data in it. One more thing that's on this page I want to say it. Human data, human cases is very limited in value for mosquito control. You know, you may have had the positive, but you may have had a human case. But by the time that we find out it's a human case, it's typically 3 to 6 weeks after the person was bitten. And where were they bitten? Were they visiting mama on the other side of the parish or someplace else? Were they bitten? And so human data is not that valuable to us as a tool, as a management tool for controlling mosquitoes and the virus in the mosquitoes. So let's flip the page. Page 2, and this is, you can see it's got California viruses, it's got Triple E, Eastern equine encephalitis, it's got St. Louis encephalitis, it's got Western equine encephalitis, and it's got West Nile. And this is the data from 2017. And so you can see in 2017 across the state we had 428 positive pools. We had no positive pools from Livingston Parish because nobody did. So we had 50 bird bloods that we draw. We're still doing experiments with birds in West Baton Rouge. They've got a program where that's where a lot of this 50 is. They're still trying to find out if they can use woodland birds, use mist nets, and try to find out, is there a correlation? Can they find a better tool or another tool by using live birds, or using that blood? So that's what most of those are. And we had 6 horse cases. Neuroinvasively last year, we had 36 cases across the state. We had 8 fever cases. Now remember when I said that there's only 0.5% of the people are neuroinvasive, but around 10 to 20% are West Nile fever. But very few of those are reported. So that's again why that human cases as far as driving your control is somewhat problematic, because you're only going to get a percentage of those, and then the aseptic cases, most of those are going to be missed unless somebody went and gave blood and they tested them. And you can compare last year with 2016 right below, and you can see the same numbers, or you see the numbers and compare them. The next page, page 3, it's the first time we show Livingston Parish. It's about a little over halfway down. In 2007, you had 2 neuroinvasive cases, and you had 2 asymptomatic cases. 2 people went and probably gave blood and found out they had it. But you had 2 neuroinvasive cases here in this parish. And you also had 1 Triple E case. So the next page is really interesting. It's by age, the cases according to age, and as you can see in the middle one, it's got it by sex. Males get it more. Males are outside more. Males are in the woods more. Males are more likely to be bitten. But if you look at the age, you can see that it spreads a wide area. Go to page 5. Again, West Nile, and it's broken down as to the weeks that it showed up. So I'm going to skip over again. Like I said, I'm going to run through this report. You can study this later at your leisure. On page 6, from 2000 to 2017, we had 1,050 neuroinvasive cases in the state. We had 690 fever cases reported and 186 reports of aseptic cases. But those neuroinvasives, that's serious. Page 7, you can see the timing. Look at that part, the graph that has the purple on it. You can see mainly in the middle of June, we've had cases all the way into December. Actually, when you look at one of these graphs, I'm not going to pull it out, but one of the graphs, you'll see we do this on a bell curve. And the amplitude and the width changes year to year, but we have cases in the state every year. We have cases in Livingston Parish almost every year. But one thing, when we look at those bell curves, there's often a second little bump. It comes up, the cases drop down in August, they drop into September, the number of cases, and then in October, we have this little bump. Happens most years. You know what it is? Squirrel hunters and deer hunters. They go out and they sit there. And they sit there and they're very quiet. They don't want to put stuff on. They don't want to put repellent on. And there are woodland species that are outside of what is our primary vector that can give them the same disease. So we get this little bump with West Nile cases. Now, this is the page I wanted y'all to see more than any other page. If you look on the right-hand side, go down to the bottom, and you'll see Livingston Parish. And if you notice, you'll see these are all the parishes in the state. You'll see that, and these are the neuroinvasive cases from 2002 to now. And you'll see that Livingston has had cases all but 3 years. On a per population basis, you're kind of at the top. It has to do with the ecology. It has to do, most of our higher cases, parishes are east of the river, with the exception of Shreveport and Alexandria. They have them for different reasons, but it's just the ecology. It is what it is. We have it here. We don't have it here. The best thing we can do, in my mind, is to have a surveillance-based mosquito abatement program that will help suppress that. Because when you're looking at neuroinvasive cases and you're looking at deaths, you're looking at your children, you're looking at your spouses, you're looking at your parents. And it's going to happen here. And I wish I could say it didn't. And I wish I could say we're going to have the last couple of years in Livingston have been light with just 1 or 2 cases. But if you go back, we've had as high as 11, 12 cases a year, 6 cases a year in 2012 of neuroinvasive. And those are your friends and your families. That's why most of the parishes on the I-10, I-12 corridor, virtually all of them just about have surveillance-based mosquito abatement. The next page is just something that, since it's here, I'm going to talk about it. It's been a hot topic, and that is Zika virus. What you have here, if you look in the highlighted box, there have been 2 Zika cases, but they're not. What they are is people who went overseas. They went to Honduras, they went to Bolivia, they went to Club Med. They had a wonderful time, and they came back, and they said they either had Zika while they were down there, or they came back with Zika. And there's been no local transmission of Zika in our part of the South, not just Louisiana, but around us. And the reason is because when you get sick, or the way I put it is when you get sick, you come back, you feel bad, you pile up on the sofa, and you don't go outside for the mosquitoes to feed on you. This is remember we said that West Nile is a bird mosquito virus. This is a simian mosquito virus, meaning that it's monkeys and humans are the reservoir. And we don't have troops of long-tailed monkeys running out in our pine trees. So we don't have that reservoir for it. So it's going to be very difficult for Zika to maintain itself in the population. Okay? Not saying that it can't happen, but it would be isolated, and good mosquito control can take care of it very quickly. They did in Florida when they did have that. There were also, chikungunya came into the Western Hemisphere in 2013. It again is a fever that causes a lot of pain with your bones. It causes your hands to swell up. It's very painful, flu-like symptoms. It came into the Caribbean. It spread across parts of South America and Central America. There have been, but again, it's a simian virus. So use that as an example of what happens with that type of virus and compare it to Zika. And there were 14 cases total of local transmission of chikungunya in the United States, all in Florida, and the local mosquito control killed them every time. So that's another reason we have that. We are always concerned. There are other viruses, arboviruses as we call them, around the world that can come here. And we have the mosquitoes capable of vectoring them. For instance, we still have the species that are capable of vectoring malaria. But none of us have had malaria. We eliminated malaria from this country. The mosquitoes are here, but it's a human mosquito disease. The mosquitoes are still here. They're still capable of vectoring it. We don't have malaria here. And again, that shows what the things that we've been able to accomplish in the past to get rid of diseases in this field. And so we hope we can do the same thing. Again, if we ever get a case like that. Now, they occasionally get cases in California or other places, and they've always been stopped right away. Additionally, there's malarial diseases such as dog heartworm. As you all know, if you have a dog in this part of the country, even if it's an inside dog, if it's not treated, most likely it will develop dog heartworm, and it's going to get that from mosquito bites. So with that, I would like to introduce the three people that I brought. I have Randy Baith. Randy is the Assistant Director of the East Baton Rouge Mosquito Abatement District. Mosquito rodent control. Yes. Randy is extremely knowledgeable. He's been he's been pretty much head of operations there for many years, and can help you answer any question. Next to him is George Bragg. George runs the West Baton Rouge Mosquito Abatement District. Now, that's a district that is totally funded by their council, and George has been running that. It's a much smaller district than you would have. But we always say George is the gold standard of small districts. What he and his people do is absolutely amazing. He can tell you how to do something very efficiently because he's the best at it. And Herf Jones is past president of the Louisiana Mosquito Control Association. Herf helped start and runs the Iberia Parish Mosquito Abatement District, which is probably more along the lines that y'all would start as something like that. I asked these three gentlemen to come so that when you're asking questions, some of the questions you would ask East Baton Rouge really wouldn't pertain to you because they've got a $5 million budget. Their program is so large, they have so many employees, you're never going to feed there. So Randy but they do a lot of research that pertains to all of us across Louisiana. And they've discovered a lot of great things. With that, I guess I'll ask if you have any questions for me and for the three gentlemen behind me. Ask us anything. We're here. We have no, as they say, no dog in the hunt. We're here to help you any way we can and give you information that you so desire.
Any comments from the council?
No, I appreciate you coming out and talking to us about this. I have some questions about the types of chemicals that y'all use in your program. Anybody, whoever y'all think.
I'm Randy Bates, once again, Assistant Director of East Baton Rouge. And one of the things Kyle hinted at, and I think a lot of people make the assumption that mosquito control is a night spray truck driving down the road spraying chemicals to kill adult mosquitoes. That's just a part of mosquito control. Today, mosquito control is what they call integrated vector or integrated mosquito management. Not only do you try to kill adult mosquitoes with certain chemicals, there's basically two classes: pyrethroid chemicals that are synthetic derivatives of chrysanthemum flowers, and organophosphates, which were developed years ago in the 40s. We also do a lot of larviciding, trying to kill mosquitoes when they're still in that aquatic stage. You guys know over here that septic effluent ditches throughout your parish, that is the primary breeding habitat of the southern house mosquito. That's the primary vector for West Nile, dog heartworm, and St. Louis encephalitis. Sometimes the easiest way to get control is to use chemicals just as larvicides. And the availability of those, pretty expensive, but nevertheless, they're totally harmless to other organisms, unlike some of the adulticides that can kill non-target insects. So they're usually bacterial endotoxins that just kill mosquito or midge larvae, and you have to apply those in the water. That's a daytime operation, okay? That's one thing we do. We also do a lot of educational outreach. You've got to go out just like this and educate the public of what they can do. Emptying that bird bath out every time you take the recycling out. Once every 7 days, you'll prevent a lot of mosquito problems in your yard, protect you, your family, and your neighbors. So integrated means you're doing as much as you can. Now, smaller programs have some limitations, but surveillance-driven adulticiding, surveillance-driven larviciding, go out and dip and see where they are, apply those chemicals, and reach out and educate the public on what they can do. So that's very important. Like I said, I didn't answer your question exactly, but the chemicals are fundamentally just two classes. And they do have the adulticides that kill the flying mosquitoes. The dose makes the poison. In mosquito control, you're spraying a tiny droplet out of a truck that's usually 30 microns or less. It's just going to impact that flying mosquito. It's not going to kill the mosquito that lands on the bush the next day that was impacted. That chemical will break down by that time. We try to use chemicals that are quickly broken down, not necessarily to protect contact in subsequent hours, but to prevent resistance from developing. So you want to use small droplets, ultra low volume spray, a certain droplet size that's just going to impact mosquitoes. Now, if some of those droplets do hit, like honeybees, you can kill them. And that's why the label says you cannot apply those adulticides where there are any bees foraging. So trucks have to operate after dark. That's basically when the mosquitoes are flying, too. We have surveillance traps that operate every hour and collect mosquitoes, and it'll tell us when they're flying. We try to time that. And like Kyle said, you don't want to just, well, I'm going to spray Walker because it's Thursday. You want to do this based on where those traps are indicating populations, what species it is, and the activity period of that species. So all that comes into consideration. That's why you need someone with some fundamental vector knowledge and to run programs, to direct programs.
So you'd say hiring a really good director would be the first start?
Absolutely. You really got to have someone, and in Louisiana, you've got to have someone that has a supervisory license, certification from Ag and Forestry. That means they've got experience, and they've had to pass a fairly rigorous exam.
Let me ask you a question, if you don't
Yes,
mind.
sir.
You're the director for the East Baton Rouge Parish?
Assistant director.
Can you tell me what the East Baton Rouge Parish Mosquito Abatement Program costs annually?
I certainly can. It's a $5.5 million a year.
Let me get this right. $5.5 million.
Yeah. Now we
I just want to make sure
We have 37 full-time employees. We have 2 airplanes. We have 16 trucks. So we have a pretty good sized program. We have 2 dedicated millages. So we do a lot of overtime.
Thank you. I want to clarify that. I just make sure I heard that
Pretty
right.
good size.
I have a question. I'm sorry. To your knowledge, and I imagine it would be to your knowledge, has the chemical process, has it changed much in, let's say, the last 6 or 7 years, or is it basically that they use the same chemical, blends?
That's a great question. Actually, the adulticides that are around, the classes have been around for quite a while. There's been a shift over to those pyrethroid chemicals for adulticiding. But the real advances that have been made are in those larviciding chemicals, the isolation of a fungus that kills mosquito larvae. It's called spinosad. It's been used in other applications. Bacterial endotoxins, Bacillus spiricus, that specifically kills a number of mosquitoes, and Bacillus thuringiensis. And so the real advances have been made more in the larviciding. Now, there have been some new products registered for killing adult mosquitoes, but most of them have come from agriculture. You have to realize mosquito control is a fairly small entity. It's confined to primarily California, Florida, Louisiana, and some scattered places in the Northeast. So there's not a huge market. So manufacturers don't want to spend $10 million constantly develop a new product that's only going to be used by a small number of people.
I'm just saying, but you were saying this has come about in the last, 5 years?
No, I'd say the larvicides have come probably the last 15 years, the real development. But you're right, the adulticides, not a lot of new products are in the pipe because of regulatory expenses.
Sure.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
I was just going over this data. It looks like to me, East Baton Rouge, possibly in 2017, was the second highest with humans infected with the West Nile virus.
Absolutely.
Can you explain why it would be?
Absolutely. That's been quite a dilemma for us, because in 2002, the outbreak year here in Louisiana, so here earlier, but we had 50 neuroinvasive cases. And say you have one neuroinvasive case, that ratio that Kyle was talking about, you can assume 150 people were bitten by a infected mosquito for one neuroinvasive case. Now, East Baton Rouge Parish, unfortunately, has the perfect storm of conditions. It's a city built in the forest. We have huge numbers of house mosquitoes. We have septic ditches, just like you guys. We've got 180 sewer treatment plants. Not MODABs, I mean sewer modular wastewater treatment plants. We have a huge population of house sparrows and cardinals. Those are the two birds that amplify that virus most often. Well, where are house sparrows and cardinals in July and August? They're in your backyard drinking water out of your bird feeder. Where are the mosquitoes in July and August? They're in the catch basin in the front of your house or the septic ditch. So we would be sure to have more cases if we didn't have some kind of control. Now, to be frank, our adulticiding operations against that southern house mosquito are not entirely effective. We don't see dramatic drops after we run the spray truck through that area. We do very good at killing the larvae. Now, having said that, we have great success at killing what Kyle was talking about, floodwater mosquitoes. After the big storm in 2016, we had trap counts down in Hoosier Road of 3,000 mosquitoes in a trap. Spraying with our aerial applications of adulticide reduced it 93% in one night. So we have good luck killing those, but we're not entirely successful at controlling house mosquitoes except through that larvicide. That's great. And the same thing is true with Ouachita Parish. They've got a program that has difficulty controlling house mosquitoes, and they're have the same kind of bird composition that we do, and they have a lot of West Nile activity.
So, Iberians, you're similar in size to us.
Very, very close. We're about 1,000.
What's going on with everybody? Well, since we're going to talk about the $5.5 million budget East Baton Rouge Parish has, well, what is your budget?
Well, our sales tax generates about $3.2 million a year. It's a quarter of 1 cent sales tax. But we have an interesting caveat in our tax code. The funds that are not used to operate the mosquito control operation, that are unexpended at the end of the year, those funds are returned in surplus to the parish. parish-wide drainage specifically, and the incorporated municipalities. So our program actually runs on a model of about $1.2 to $1.4 million per year, which includes larviciding, ground, and an aerial program. So about half of the proceeds each year goes back in surplus. And over since our 12-year period, we've generated about $23 million in surplus to go back to the parish.
So in essence, it costs Iberia Parish between $1.2 and $1.4. Now, what programs? I mean, we know East Baton Rouge does a lot of research. What programs does Iberia Parish at 1.2 to 1.4? Right. What do y'all do?
We're totally focused on operational mosquito control, if you will. Okay. Our major focus is heavily focused, again, as the others have said before, on larvicide. The more pressure that you put on the juvenile population, it has a significant impact on the adult population that you're going to deal with later on. In fact, we have municipal programs within the state that's all that they do. We have programs across the country that's all that they do, is larvicide.
How you say it?
Larvicide.
Larvicide.
The larvae is the larvae is the aquatic form or the immature form or the juvenile form of the mosquito before it becomes an adult. So that is very effective for us. Other than that, we do have a parish-wide ground UOV spray truck program. We do have a well-developed aerial program, aerial program as well. But our aerial program is focused on populated areas. If you've ever visited Iberia, you know that, as a Queen City, we're sugarcane rural focused, for the state. So we have a lot of wide open spaces. So our control operations are focused to where the people live. And we do not have a high prevalence of disease occurrence from year to year over time, but we do have a significant pressure from floodwater mosquitoes. That mosquito that you can see coming after you, that's chasing you down, that'll never go away, that comes in the 30s and 40,000s per trap night. So that's where the focus of our effort is.
So do y'all do, earlier we were talking about surveillance and then spraying, so y'all do surveillance?
Yes, sir.
So basically you do surveillance and then spray where the need is?
Yes. We want to know, we have 36 static surveillance sites. And we want to know at each of those sites, not only how many mosquitoes are collecting, but what kind of mosquitoes we're collecting. That diversity within your population is going to change for us throughout the year, and it also helps us to be effective and efficient at applying our control interventions by timing. We have temporal, we have data over time that we know if we have a rain event at a certain time of the year, which is 2 inches or more, we can expect an explosive population of what we call Seropha columbiae, and we can prepare our operations either from the ground, larviciding, or from the air to be ready to address those populations in a timely fashion. That reduces our cost, that reduces our asset allocations for manpower and stuff like that.
So on your aerial spray, y'all on a plane, y'all contract that out. Tell me, how do y'all handle it?
We do a contract service. We found it in our model to be most effective for us. It relieves us of course, overhead, if you will. But we do have the facility for the contractor to operate on site. When we built our facility, we built it with a hangar. We're on an airport. We're on an active taxiway. So they have a turnkey operation for us. They provide aircraft, pilot, and fuel station. We provide the chemical and the target and the dosage. That also adds to our effectiveness and efficiency because it takes them less time to go. It's very important for them to be on target at a very specific time. If they have to ferry back to reload, they need to be back on target very quickly. So it's very helpful to have a setup like that for us.
It sounds like y'all do a really good job of mosquito abatement for your Iberia, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes,
I mean,
sir.
there's probably not many other places in Louisiana that do as good a job as y'all. Am I correct in saying that?
I'm very proud of what we do.
Okay.
My colleagues are very, very good at what they do.
And which leads me to my next question. So if I go to Iberia one given evening and I sit outside in my barbecue and in my picnic, I pretty much won't get bit by mosquitoes?
No, sir, I'm not going to promise that.
I mean, you are the best, okay?
I'm also not going to try to, sell you lakefront property in the desert. Please understand, and I think this gentleman here to my right alluded to it as well. It's not a perfect solution. Mosquitoes outnumber us by the billions and trillions.
So you still will get bit.
So there is a likelihood that you may be accosted by a mosquito, but you will be able to enjoy your outdoor event.
So instead of getting bit 10 times in Dillon, we would get bit 5 over there, you think?
Maybe
Or,
less.
I mean, I'm just trying to...
Each one is incrementally more attractive to mosquitoes by the...
So one person could be
microbes.
standing next to one person, and this
Absolutely.
person get bit more than this one.
Right.
Which has nothing to do with spraying. It must be some type of
Right.
something in a person's...
Your pheromones and
pheromones.
the microbes that populate your skin.
So that would probably have a lot more to do with whether you get bit than abatement.
Right,
Am I
right.
correct in saying that?
Right. So our objective, first and foremost, is to protect the public from mosquito-borne diseases to the best of our capability. We know the statistics, we know the prevalence and the occurrence, we know the risk. There's risk here, there's risk across the state, there's risk in my parish. Have we had West Nile cases? Yes, we have. Have we had neuroinvasive cases? Yes, we have. But if we were not there with the control efforts to apply those interventions, to reduce those disease populations, to reduce those nuisance populations, we would have so much more mortality and also individuals with cases of encephalitis that they have to live with chronic symptoms for the rest of their life. In the nuisance mosquitoes, there's also secondary medical issues being bit by over and over, being accosted by mosquitoes for, ad nauseum. There's infection, urticaria, and many other secondary issues related to excessive mosquito bites other than a virus pathogen.
First, I want to thank you for coming out and sharing the information with us. How long have y'all been doing abatement in Iberia?
We started May 1st, 2006. Prior to that, mosquito control was done by a contractor. There were events which led the parish council to decide to take ownership of the program. Every bit of we are Iberia Parish government employees. All of our assets, materials, buildings, improvements belong to the parish.
Have y'all's compounds changed any to your knowledge, or y'all basically are using the same chemicals?
Right. The class of chemicals, so far as active ingredients, has been fairly standard for quite some time. There have been small developments in technologies or how those actives are delivered, but they're fairly standardized. Synthetic pyrethroids, natural pyrethroids, and organophosphates. We use a combination of those because we don't want our mosquitoes to get accustomed to one material at one dosage rate. We make a high bit of effort to make sure that they're not becoming tolerant or resistant. Right. And Mr. Bragg here is with us. Our chemicals are registered by EPA. They're highly regulated, and their label is very specific. And it's very important that you all know that the label is the law, and we treat it as the label is the law. And anything followed beyond that is where any use of the chemical beyond outside of those prescribed uses on that label is where there's an instance for issues to occur. But EPA wouldn't register that chemical if it wasn't safe.
Thank you.
I represent probably the most rural district in the parish, and are there things that individuals can do? I mean, other than dumping out the bird bath. I know I live on property, and people I know live on property, and we spray the pyrophene-based stuff around our property.
Right.
So if the government doesn't want to take on spraying, and I probably got, this is not a popular thing in my district. So if we got 10% or less of people in my district that wants to take an initiative to do something, are there things that they can do? What would you recommend an individual doing? But there are products. I mean, I buy them at the Tractor Supply.
Yeah, right. Well,
and they're pretty effective, it seems like to me.
Within our rural acreage, which is quite a bit in Iberia Parish, that's where we do probably weigh a little heavier with our larviciding applications because we find it, to be effective. These are also naturally occurring materials and materials that can be, if you will, bought over counter. There's mosquito dunks, which are the basic ingredient that we're using in a bacterial larvicide that we use in a product that you can find at Home Depot and Lowe's and Garden Center and what have you. You can use that in your flooded swales in your fields or in your roadside area as well as prescribed and directed by the package. And we also work very closely with our rural citizens on making sure their laterals and their roadside features are clear. And I know that you guys probably deal with that quite a bit, we do have, an instance where folks, unfortunately, like to put rubbish and trash and what have you in those laterals and do not appreciate how important it is to keep that clear. Because mosquitoes, they don't like deep water and they don't like flowing water. So if those laterals and roadside features are doing what they're designed to do, then you eliminate the possibility for propagation of mosquitoes on your property or near your home.
All right, I got one question. Hurry up, we're running out of time.
Do y'all have any data where your chemicals affect any other species?
Yes, we work, we do an extensive amount of work and research to make sure that there's negligible or zero impact on non-target organisms, and that's what we call that. From endangered species to actually cohabitating aquatics or flying insects as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Sir. All right, we're going to allow a couple of questions from the audience. Coming up, just try to keep it brief. I mean, we allow them. We're going to give you as much time as we can. But like I said, we have 2 more meetings, so just say what you.
We need to ask them a few things,
Okay.
we need to know too. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Michelle Gibbs. I was injured by the chemicals that y'all were talking about last year. Y'all were talking about the organophosphates that y'all mix in with your chemical. That's not as safe as y'all are telling the people. I brought paperwork that I give to each one of the members of the board that I'd like y'all to take a chance to look over. When y'all do, I also put references in there for y'all to go back to look at. It breaks down the chemicals. That's my husband, and he'll give y'all a copy of those. It may not be the exact chemical, but it does come from the same
Bear Environmental Science groups that y'all get y'all's chemicals from, Vector Spray, all those. Diabrom is one of the organophosphates, which is the one that was used here last year to spray, where y'all brought in the statistics from. That was the one that was used here to spray last year. That is not safe. And if you go through, y'all are talking about perithiums and I want to use the word correctly, lithium or lithium. One's an oil-based, one's a water-based. One of the things I want to ask, y'all say that there's really nothing dangerous, but when you go through, you look at one of the first things it says under a warning statement is that it causes, it's suspected of causing cancer. I know the word suspected, but as that first being the first hazard statement, how can you say that it's not, that it's safe for the public?
You have to realize that you can put salt, look at the safety data sheet on sodium chloride, and the right dose that can kill.
Right.
So almost any substance can have toxic consequences depending on the dose.
Exactly.
The dose makes that poison. So it does say possible carcinogen, but absolutely on talking about diabetes.
Well, I'm looking at the Bear Environmental Safety.
Oh, okay.
Not the organophosphate. I'm looking at the one that's supposed to be.
I think probably what it is it's synergized with another compound called fipronil phosphate. That breaks down enzymes in the insect that would normally inactivate that hydrogen. That has been listed as a possible carcinogen. When we look at the way the data has been done for it to be registered by the EPA, they actually give very huge amounts of these chemicals to rats or mice, and to kind of see what was going to happen with their liver. Most of these things would be detoxified in the liver, and some of them do have an association with that kind of tumor development.
I'm not being rude, but we're not rats or mice. And this chemical injured me, it can injure anybody. And when they do a experiment on a rat or a mice, and no matter how much chemical it gives to that small little animal, if it can injure that small little animal, what it can do to a human, nobody can say.
And you're absolutely right about they have to use those animal models. We're not going to get volunteers
Exactly.
to do this kind of work. And as Herb mentioned, it's very important that the equipment that you're using applies the chemical in the right amount, the right droplet size, so that the label on that particular insecticide is not violent. If something goes wrong and you get big droplets and they fall over water, yes, you could have non-target death. In human cases, everyone has a very different physiology, and what may affect you may be much smaller than the risk to other people based on.
But there's no way to tell which people it would be. So you would almost have to test everyone in the parish to know who it would affect and who it wouldn't. Now, I was reading through these chemicals, and I'm not even going on the organophosphate, which is the most dangerous part of what you're talking about, the chemical y'all mix in. I'm going on the least deadly or dangerous. It says that the droplets you're talking about, if it lands on a non-porous or a porous surface, such as playground equipment and stuff like this, it's to be cleaned off immediately. If your equipment goes through at night, a non-porous property, it can stay on that for 24 hours. You have playground equipment, you have daycare equipment, you have all this that is not cleaned every day. If that equipment is not known that it is on that equipment that night, and those children get on it the next day, and they chew on it, they eat on it, and those children are allergic to it, and they had not known it because those kids were not tested, or these people are not tested daily to know if they're allergic to it or not, then they can be. So
when that child eats an apple that came from California or Oregon, it's got insecticides that are much more residual.
And I'm not arguing with that at all. But
So the risk is based on that dosage, and you're right. That's why mosquito control, public health. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm just going to say, we use chemicals that do photoradon. big word existing means it breaks down.
Well, I understand, and I'm also saying, you know, it's not sunny always the next day, so it don't always break down the next day. Also, the parish that we live in is also swampy, there's waterways, there's streams. My property sits, you've got a road here and you've got a canal that wraps right around it. The truck goes by and sprays. All it does is run the mosquitoes under my porch. It does not kill them. You're talking about killing the larva. It doesn't kill the larva because the ditches are so full of grass and trash. You know, so my point is it done no good, but you put dangerous chemicals on my property. It done no good. You're wanting me to pay for something that's doing absolutely no good in my parish. 90% of the parish is that way. Plus, reading through your chemicals, it states that these chemicals are not to be sprayed in waterways. They are not to be sprayed in all this. They are dangerous to fish. They're dangerous to, crustaceans, oysters. The runoff from treated areas or deposition of spray droplets into any body of water may be hazardous to aquatic organisms. So how can you answer that if the runoff itself is dangerous from droplets?
Hold. We didn't have this meeting for a debate.
I'm not debating. I'm asking questions.
This was simply asking some people to come in and educate us, just like you did the last time you
I'm
was
trying
here.
to get educated. I'm asking the man questions.
And I mean, we're all going to study. We're all going to study what you.
Y'all want to know the answer to these questions?
We've run out of time.
We're just out of time. I mean,
we let them say everything. I mean, we just want to know the answers to these questions. They're experts. That's why we want to know.
we're just out of time. I mean, we can possibly get together with the council and see if they want to try to do something again.
I don't want to do this again.
Is there any other?
So you don't want to do it again?
Is there any other questions that need?
They asked all the questions they wanted to ask about the money part. Why can't we ask the questions we want to know about the health part? Because that's what we want to know about.
And that's what they stood up here and spoke. They spoke about.
They spoke their part, but they're not answering.
They're not here to sell us anything. They're not here to sell us. They're just here to educate us on what they do.
That's what we're trying to get done is be educated on this
We've run
stuff.
out of time tonight.
Yeah, I mean we're just out of time.
Period. Yeah, that's it.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I'm gonna let you ask your question.
Yeah, so my son contracted West Nile, on our property here. And I have a question about, you were talking about some of the components of the spray, natural ingredients, I think like chrysanthemum, is that correct? Are there any indigenous plants or anything at all that you can have on the property that aids, or is that not enough in helping? I know not from the larva standpoint, but from the adult mosquitoes, is there anything at all?
There's a lot of people working on botanical extracts. Some of them have some problems. And as the plants are growing, it's only going to be repellent immediately around that. It's not going to help you when you turn the force light on, mosquitoes can be septic, they fly up, and you send them during the growth. It's not going to work.
Anyone else?
Right.
Anyone else?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion. What?
Is there any?
Question.
Well,
One last question. Last question.
Why they was able to talk for an hour, and my daughter kept talking all.
Ma'am,
She talked to us for an hour the other
last
day.
time. She did.
So he should have been here.
All right, do I have a motion?
Yeah, I make a second.
Motion by Mr. Talbot, second by Mr. Keene. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
I'm opposed.
You always are. That's okay.
I'm opposed.
Our libertarian.
I'd like to hear any more. I mean, I want
But we don't have time.
They came out as well.
You
I
can
mean,
go out there and
just
talk to them,
say,
John. You got time.
Yep.
we'll call it next order together.
This meeting adjourned.
Thank you.